Hello, everyone. Happy Sunday. Welcome to Everything is Energy. Welcome to the weekly astrology forecast for the week of May 10th, today, Sunday, through May 16th, 2026. This is a week, the theme is really about grounded clarity and the courage to heal. Compared to the last couple weeks, this week definitely carries a little bit of a quieter, a more reflective tone. The last couple weeks were more acceleration feeling. And that's because Taurus energy is still in the background. We still have Sun in the sign of Taurus. And that's really helping us and inviting us to anchor our nervous system and to slow down enough to hear what is true and what is sustainable and what is emotionally grounded. At the same time, there's just so much going on in astrology in general. In the May forecast, I spoke of the month of May being this kind of underlying acceleration energy. This what we're being invited to do this month and this week, of course, is a healing and an expansion process. And that process of healing and expansion comes through awareness, and it comes through honesty, and it comes through conscious action. So let's go ahead and get started with Sunday, May 10th. And this is really one of the most astrologically layered days of this week. And it's centered around there's this conversation that's happening between the Sun and Venus and Jupiter. And together, these three planets, this is what's happening on Sunday. They're creating an energetic field that's really focused on relationships and values and emotional openness, but also about the desire for growth and expansion. And as the day progresses into the evening today, we have Pluto entering the picture. But let's go ahead and start with the Sun. This is all happening Sunday evening. First the Sun is going to be semi-sextile to Lady Venus, and that's really a subtle alignment between our identity and our relationships. So, as I mentioned, Sun is in Taurus, and this is really inviting us to embodiment and to grounded values. Venus is in Gemini, and this is bringing a sense of curiosity and relational movement. And, a semi-sextile, it's subtle, but I love subtle, and subtle is important. And this is really going to be an attempt to bridge steadiness of Taurus into movement, to seek the security of Sun and Taurus into curiosity, to kind of bridge groundedness with mental stimulation. So there's really maybe on Sunday a desire to connect, or a desire for us to express ourselves, or to share ideas or feelings. And this is kind of a soft opening on Sunday evening in the relational field. A couple hours later, on 9 o'clock at night, Venus is going to be semi-sextile to Jupiter. So first she's semi-sextile to the Sun, and then she's going to be semi-sextile to Jupiter. And that's going to be around 9 o'clock. And this is where the emotional and relational energy in classic Jupiter fashion is really going to begin to expand. And, Venus and Jupiter are both benefic planets. And that means, well, they're traditionally associated with abundance. They're associated with generosity and pleasure and emotional openness. And while, Venus is in Gemini and Jupiter is in Cancer, those two are also simpatico, and that it lays the groundwork for meaningful conversations and for emotional sharing, maybe even a little bit of nostalgia. There's a desire here on Sunday for understanding and closeness. But also because it's a semi-sextile, that means there's going to be an invitation for a little bit of an adjustment or a shift. So the question in this with this aspect is really about, how can we stay emotionally grounded while remaining open to growth and to expansion. And then just an hour later at 10:13 p.m., we have the Sun sextiling Jupiter. That's why I said all three of these guys are in like this little triangle of conversation. And this is, the strongest. The Sun sextiling Jupiter is the strongest. It's the most supportive combination of all of these three aspects that are happening right around the same time in Sunday evening. Sun is in Taurus, and this is harmonizing really wonderfully with Jupiter in Cancer. And this is going to bring some emotional generosity, some steadiness, some gratitude, some sense of nourishment. So the word that comes to mind is restorative. And so maybe it's a time for us to remember what's truly meaningful to us. And, the Taurus and Cancer together really emphasize home. They emphasize safety. They emphasize, as I said, nourishment and the physical body, as well as a sense of emotional security. And so, this is expansion with Jupiter, but it's heart-centered expansion. And there is growth, but it's grounded abundance. So those aspects are just kind of like a flowing sequence, and they kind of help us bridge this sense of expansion with connection and with grounding. And then just about 20 minutes later, Pluto's going to enter the picture, and this is going to close the day with kind of intensifying the emotional depth of what's happening. So Venus is going to be sesquiquadrate to Pluto at 11 p.m. And, Venus in Gemini, sesquiquadrate Pluto in Aquarius, emotional complexity, intensity beneath the surface might be some themes. There might also be some awareness that we have of our attachment dynamics or deeper truths within our relationship. Maybe even something that felt light or didn't ping for us. There might be something beneath the surface that we can see. And so there might be a little feeling of emotional vulnerability. There might be some subtle power dynamics that we can see there. And there's also just a desire for authenticity beneath it all. So this aspect asks us not to remain at the surface. And part of what's happening this week is really that rooting and that presence while there's so much going on. It's what's helping us stay conscious and stay grounded. So, I guess the question with this aspect is what kind of connection is truly meaningful and sustainable. So I just said so much and I'm only on Sunday, right? But there's a lot going on Sunday. But Sunday isn't necessarily about expansion or pleasure just on the surface. It's about recognizing what truly nourishes us. And it's about, you know, putting our finger on what kinds of relationships feel emotionally grounded and emotionally nourishing. And also, where is emotional honesty, our own emotional truth now really being invited and required? Okay, let's pick up the pace a little bit. There's one aspect on Monday, May 11th, and this is Mercury is going to be quintiling the North Node around 4:30 in the afternoon. And this is a quiet alignment day, I think, with so much happening on Sunday, especially Sunday evening, into Monday. And it's worth noting, I'm talking about these as their exact points in time. This stuff is giving us a swath of what's the themes throughout the week. I like to say astrology is cuspy. We can feel these aspects before they happen. We can feel these aspects after they become exact. So Monday is, it's good that it's a little quieter, and maybe there's a subtle but a meaningful moment of mental clarity with Mercury involved, or a conversation or a realization that may feel, I'm going to say, quietly significant. And this is a good time, a good day for us to pay attention to subtle energy, to our intuition, to maybe even if there's patterns that keep repeating, something that we keep noticing, um, something that feels intuitively important to us. So patterns and things we notice doesn't mean that everybody has to notice. This is about what naturally draws our own attention. And doesn't mean that we have to react to it. This is about having a realization and kind of let the direction reveal itself gradually. Moving on to Tuesday, May 12th. This is a day where, our clarity is really going to require some grounding. We have two aspects here. One is around 1 a.m., Mercury is going to be semi-square to Neptune. And this means, if it's exact, that might be in our dream time, especially with Neptune involved, but perception may feel a little bit unclear. And so, we may feel a little bit illusion and delusion of Neptune, dissolving of boundaries of Neptune. There might be this sense of not being super certain of the next steps. And that doesn't mean don't go. It just means put a pin in that it might be a good idea to pause before assuming that we are certain about something. And about 12 hours later at 1 p.m. on Tuesday, we have Venus quintiling Saturn. And this aspect is really going to help restore the steadiness. You know, Venus quintiling Saturn is going to help our relationships, it's going to help our values, it's going to help our emotional priorities to become more grounded. And with Saturn involved, the planet of karma, it's going to support maturity, emotional maturity, mental maturity, just energetic maturity. Some words that come to mind are intentional connection and emotional responsibility. So we're not just reacting anymore. Those days are over. I really kind of feel, at least for a little bit. You know, it's about harnessing the power of our consciousness, as I said, was part of the theme. It's just permeating through May. So this week is really inviting this kind of inner work. And so then when we move on to Wednesday, May 13th, we have two aspects. This is a day of expansive thinking, and this is because Jupiter's involved in both of them. Mercury is going to be sextiling Jupiter at around 1 a.m., and this is a really great aspect for perspective and for understanding. Mercury sextiling Jupiter supports thoughtful communication, right? Thoughtful conversation. It could also be the ability to see the larger picture. Um, there's this sense of wisdom being available with that aspect. And then around 6 a.m. we have Jupiter sesquiquadrate to the North Node. So, you know, the North Node is going to remind us of where we're headed, right? But Jupiter is, you know, growth is an expansion also require some kind of discernment. I don't know if Zoom always noise cancels out my lovely barking dogs, but my dogs really felt strongly about Jupiter sesquiquadrate to the North Node. And you know, I'll just say growth requires discernment. We are beyond the days of far beyond the days of autopilot and far beyond the days of just glibly ignoring things. We're really being invited to be with the energy that is within us and surrounding us. And this brings me to Thursday, May 14th, which is a day, just one aspect. I'm going to call it a day of clear seeing because we have the sun conjunct Mercury. Mercury's in Taurus and sun is in Taurus. And this is really one of the clearest mental days of the week because the sun conjunct anything is illuminating, right? It's bringing clarity, it's bringing focus, it's bringing grounded awareness. And, you know, this is a really great aspect for practical decisions, for organizing our thoughts, but really for comprehending and coming to discern and understand what matters most. We are the litmus, right? So it's about our personal truth and what our intuition tells us. But it's also worth noting that these guys are in Taurus. So Taurus really reminds us that clarity can often be very simple. Taurus isn't necessarily like Sagittarius that likes to go out and Gemini and talk to everybody and expand and explore. This is really about might be right at home, might be right within our reach. We have two aspects on Friday, the 15th, and Friday's going to be a day to kind of slow down the mind and soothe and ease the mental body. And this is because Mercury's involved again. Mercury's going to be semi-square to Saturn at 7 a.m. And so, you know, by default, this, you know, the mind may feel more restrained. It may feel more serious. Um, and it's just it's worth noting that when these aspects happen, that something might slow down. There might something about timing, something about doubting ourselves, you know, but this isn't failure. This is an invitation to refine. And slowing down doesn't mean stopping. It means refining, and it means that we are always in charge. And oh, there's three aspects. I can't believe I forgot. So, but the second aspect with Mercury is at 7:40 a.m. And this is going to be Mercury's going to be semi-sextile to Venus. That's a softer influence. And that's really going to help restore communications and relational ease because Venus brings the scales of justice with her, right? Because she rules both Taurus and Libra. And So that's a really nice aspect. And then we have Pluto active around 6 p.m. It's going to be semi-sextile to the North Node. And this is subtle energy for sure, but it's an important aspect for the collective undercurrent here. And this is reminding us that deep transformation is continuing beneath the surface. And it's going to remind us that even small choices that we make right now can really carry long-term significance. That who we are and what we do and what we think and how we vibrate and those little things we do when we think nobody's looking, they matter. That's a really great thing for us to remember this month. Let's close on Saturday, May 16th, excuse me. This is a day of healing through action. And this is potentially even the most important day of the week. I started off saying Saturday had so much going on. And then I know that I also said that we had several powerful aspects this week, but we have Mars conjunct Chiron in Aries on Saturday. And so, as with everything, Chiron is a powerful healing initiation. But when we have Mars conjunct Chiron in Aries, that's, definitely about action, definitely about will, definitely about self-assertion. And Chiron's going to remind us of our wounds and our spaces that are up for healing. And, Aries might really illuminate some fears we have about being visible, or some hesitation we have about taking action, or even some old wounds that are related to this notion of courage or this notion of identity, because that's the Mars and Aries energy. But as with all things Chiron, just because it's a wound doesn't mean it's a bad thing. And it's certainly not here to weaken us. It's here to deepen and broaden and strengthen and make us more, more robust and more fulfilled and even more able to do the work that we're here, or the things that we're here to do. So, instead of thinking this might weaken us, this is about maybe moving differently. And it's about recognizing patterns this week that might have just, because we were distracted, flown beneath the radar. And here it's about, is there any place that we have abandoned ourselves? Is there any place where anger or heat or frustration masks pain beneath the surface? And or is there any place where courage is now really the name of the game? But with all things Chiron, healing comes not through perfection. It comes through conscious movement here with Chiron conjunct Mars and Aries. So, this week brings emotional expansion, relational awareness for sure. There might be a little bit of, because Neptune's active, some moments of fog, but really it's about realizing that if we're not sure, let's root down and let's find grounded clarity. And also there's some, this idea of refining and not being reactionary and not being rushed. And I will say that I do think on Saturday the major healing opportunity is Mars and Chiron. Just because we are the change that we seek, right? And so if there's a way for us to fine tune and gain strength from things that may have wounded us in the past, and to realize that things don't necessarily repeat at all if we are willing to continue to rise up and continue to expand and continue to be present and continue to work with ourselves and the energy. So have a blessed week. I will get to the meditation here shortly. Bright blessings and so much love.